of Auschwitz-Birkenau. Many of the people who survived the Holocaust are, of course, now no longer with us. And the danger is that the Holocaust will become a lost in the memory of humankind. What makes the Holocaust, or the Shoah, as Jewish people understand its name in Hebrew, what makes the Shoah different from all the other tragedies, conflicts, and slaughters of innocent people? What makes it different is it was done on an industrial scale, and not just by the Germans, but by people throughout nearly every European country that collaborated with Germany to exterminate the Jewish people. When you visit Nabisham in Jerusalem, only one country stands amongst the righteous, Denmark being the only country that didn't hand over its Jews to the Nazis. That's what makes it different. And that it was coldly and calculated in an industrial manner. And the Jewish people were the victim of that. And it was built on the hatred, the irrational hatred of Jewish people that has existed for thousands of years and does still to this day. When the function of Auschwitz as an extermination center was taking shape in 1942, in 1943, the scale of operation became industrial, of which the Nazis were extremely proud. In the spring of that year, the Germans completed the construction of 4 installations at Auschwitz-Birkenau, which included gas chambers and modern facilities for cremating thousands of corpses in one day. If you visit, as I have, today's visitors to the memorial can see the ruins of buildings that become a symbol of the extermination of the Jews, but also other crimes committed at Auschwitz against Poles, Roma, Gypsies, and Russians in their thousands. It's a continuous reminder of the Shoah. Thank you.
We will now begin our candle lighting ceremony. In Nazi Germany, there was no place for the disabled because it was decided that it was a waste of time and resources to care for them. People with genetic disabilities were also seen as a threat to the gene pool of the so-called master race. Backed by willing supporters in the medical and healthcare professions, the Nazi leadership carried out a cleansing program in which thousands of people with disabilities were deemed useless and put to death like animals. We light this candle for people with disabilities who were murdered in the Holocaust. Hitler wanted to conquer all of Europe and also to make his ideology into a new religion, replacing our Christian veneration of Jesus Christ. Since Catholic priests and Christian pastors were often influential leaders in their communities, they were immediately singled out for punishment by the Nazis. Thousands of priests and pastors were forced into concentration camps. A special barracks was set up for clergymen at Dachau, the camp near Munich in Germany. A few survived, Some were executed, but most were allowed to die slowly of starvation or disease. We light this candle for the Christian leaders murdered in the Holocaust. Among the earliest victims of discrimination and persecution in Nazi Germany were its political opponents, particularly communists, socialists, social democrats, and trade union leaders. From 1933 to 1934, the German central government and various local governments, as well as local battalions of the Nazi stormtroopers and protection squads, established concentration camps throughout Germany in which to detain political prisoners. We light this candle in memory of all those humanists, non-religious, political and trade unionists who were murdered during the Holocaust. Like the Jews, the Roma Gypsies were chosen for total annihilation solely because of their race. Even though Jews are defined by their religion, Hitler saw the Jewish people as a race that he believed needed to be completely destroyed. Likewise, the Roma Gypsies were a nomadic people that were persecuted throughout history. Both groups were denied certain privileges in many European countries. The Nazis believed that both the Jews and the Gypsies were racially inferior and degenerate and therefore worthless. The Gypsies were first moved into specially designated areas or ghettos, and eventually 500,000, representing almost the entire Eastern Europe Gypsy population, were wiped out in the Holocaust. We light this candle for the Roma Gypsies murdered in the Holocaust. Of the 11 million people who were murdered during the Holocaust, 6 million were Polish citizens. 3 million of these were Jews and the rest were Christians. There were also huge numbers of victims from other European countries, including Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Ukraine, Russia, Holland, France, and Germany itself. We light this candle for the Poles and those others murdered in the Holocaust. Hitler's plan for a superior master race had no room for homosexuals, and many men from all nations, including Germany, were persecuted, tortured, and executed. Hitler even searched among his own men and found suspected homosexuals who were sent to concentration camps wearing their SS uniforms and medals. The homosexual inmates were forced to wear pink triangles on their clothes so that they could be easily recognized and further humiliated inside the camps. Between 5,000 and 15,000 homosexuals died in concentration camps during the Holocaust. We light this candle for members of the LGBT community murdered in the Holocaust. The Nazis also persecuted authors and artists whose works they considered subversive. Jewish and non-Jewish artists who opposed their regime of hatred were targeted. We light this candle in memory of all those creative minds, writers, artists, and intellectuals who were murdered in the Holocaust. We remember all those who have died through ethnic cleansing and genocide, such as Armenians, Rwandans, Yazidis, and Kurds. We call on our elected representatives to speak out against such acts. We light this candle for all victims of genocide and ethnic cleansing. And lastly, we light the candle for the 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust, an entire people singled out for complete annihilation in the most evil act of hatred in human history.
In our calling out of all the names of the different groups, in categories that were exterminated by the Nazis. Isabella mentioned the creative amongst people of Europe at that time. Authors, writers, and I'm sure poets as well. And this is a beautiful book called Ghetto. Poems about the Holocaust by Michael Longley, who has sadly passed, with beautiful illustrations by his daughter, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah, for loaning me this today. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. And I want to read 2 short poems, because when it comes to grasping what needs to be said, I think I've said 1,000 times here, that windy ministers and priests and rabbis can go on for hours trying to explain what happened. But the magic of the poet is that the poet can reduce it to a few words that touch our hearts. And in these 2 short poems by the wonderful Michael Longley, you will see what I mean. The first is called Ghetto. Because you will suffer soon and die, your choices are neither right nor wrong. A spoon will feed you, a flannel keep you clean, a toothbrush bring you back to your bathroom's view of chimney pots and gardens. With so little time for inventory or leave-taking, you are packing now for the rest of your life. Photographs, medicines, a change of underwear, a book, a candlestick, a loaf, sardines, needle and thread. These are your heirlooms, perishables, worldly goods. What you bring is the same as what you leave behind. Your last belongings, a list of your belongings. And finally, this profoundly thoughtful poem, Primo's question. How can you murder millions of people in the middle of Europe and not know? Look out the window at those miserable lines, prisoners fainting and dying of exhaustion in the long streets and at railway stations. How can you murder millions and not know? Amen. And now Shami will read for us.